My name is Brooke Calloway. I'm 31 years old. For as long as I can remember, the sentence that ended every important conversation in my family was the same 4 words. Don't make a scene. I heard it at the dinner table when I was 9 and asked why my brother Marcus got a bedroom with a window and I got the one that faced the garage wall. Don't make a scene, Brooke. I heard it at 14 when I showed my mother a text message my father had sent to a woman I didn't know with a name I didn't recognize. Don't make a scene. I heard it at 19 when I told my parents that Marcus had taken $600 from my savings envelope, the one I kept in the drawer under my winter sweaters, the one my grandmother had helped me fill $20 at a time since I was 11, and spent it on a sound system for his truck. Don't make a scene, Brooke. He needed it more than you. I heard it at 22 when I tried to tell my parents that something my uncle said to me at Thanksgiving had made me feel unsafe. Don't make a scene. He was just joking. I heard it so many times that by the time I was in my mid-20s, it had become a kind of atmospheric condition in our family, the weather that came in whenever I opened my mouth about something true. What they did not know, and what took me 6 years to understand the full value of, was that every time they told me not to make a scene, I went home and wrote it down, the date, the time, what was said, what was dismissed, what was taken. I have 4 notebooks, 214 entries across 6 years, and the night my family finally tried to use one of those entries against me, in front of my father's business partner, my mother's sister, and 12 other people at a dinner table in a house I had driven 3 hours to reach, I did not make a scene. I opened my bag. I took out notebook number 3. I turned to the page I had already bookmarked before I left my apartment. I read it out loud, and the table went so quiet you could hear the ice settling in the water glasses. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story genuinely connects with you. Drop your city and the time in the comments right now. I always want to know where you're watching from. Now, let me take you back to Roanoke, Virginia, the summer I was 9 years old, and the first time I understood what "don't make a scene" actually meant. My father, Dennis Calloway, was the owner of a mid-sized HVAC company in Roanoke, 22 employees, 3 service trucks, a reputation in the Roanoke Valley that he managed with the same precision he brought to everything external-facing. Carefully, consistently, with an eye on what people thought. My father cared enormously about what people thought. Not in a vain way, in a structural way. His identity was built on the image, and the image required that the Calloway family present as a particular kind of unit. Stable, unified, no cracks in the surface. My mother, Renee, was the maintenance crew for the image. She was warm, socially skilled, the kind of woman who knew what to say at every gathering, and how to redirect a conversation before it went somewhere inconvenient. She loved her children in the way that I have come to understand is love without full attention, genuinely felt, but aimed approximately rather than precisely. She loved us in the direction of where she thought we were, rather than where we actually were. For Marcus, who was where she thought he was, this worked fine. For me, who was somewhere she hadn't accounted for, it left a gap. Marcus was 3 years older than me. He had our father's build, and our father's ease, and our father's talent for being legible to the people whose legibility mattered. He was loud in the way that houses like ours rewarded loudness, taking up space, needing things, being noticed without having to work for it. He was not malicious. He was a person who had been handed things so consistently that the concept of a thing being someone else's had simply never calcified into a real belief. The $600 from my drawer was not theft in his mind. It was redistribution of a family resource. I was a family resource. I want to tell you about the notebooks because they are the center of this story and they deserve to be described precisely. The first one started the summer I was 23. I had just graduated from Virginia Tech with a degree in communication studies and had taken a job as a junior court reporter at a firm in Roanoke that contracted with the circuit and general district courts. I am a court reporter. My entire professional life is the practice of making a verbatim record of what people say, so that the truth of what was said cannot be disputed later. I do this in depositions, in hearings, in trials, in the rooms where things are determined and the determination needs to be permanent. I am, by profession and by temperament, a person who believes in the record. I believe that what was said matters. I believe that what was said can be proven. I believe that the difference between what someone claims happened and what actually happened is often a transcript, a document that does not soften, does not revise, does not say, well, what I meant was. I started the first notebook after a Sunday dinner at my parents' house in September of that year. Marcus had announced at the table that he was going to take over one of my father's service trucks for a side project he had. Pressure washing, he said. extra income. My father said fine. My mother said that sounds smart. I said, that's not Marcus's truck, that's a company asset. My father said, Brooke. My mother said, don't make a scene. Marcus smiled the smile he had been smiling at me since we were children. Not cruel, just certain of the outcome. The truck was gone the following Monday. Marcus used it for 4 months. It came back with 11,000 additional miles, a cracked side mirror, and a missing floor mat that nobody ever accounted for. I went home that Sunday evening and I got out a spiral notebook. Green cover, college ruled, the kind that cost $1.29 at the drugstore. And I wrote the date at the top of the first page. Then I wrote what happened, specifically, precisely, with times and quotes and the exact words that were used. Then I wrote at the bottom, don't make a scene. He needed it more than you. I did not know that September evening that I would still be writing in notebooks 6 years later. I did not know that the notebooks would accumulate to 4, spanning 214 entries, covering everything from the truck to the money to the Sunday dinners, where things were said and dismissed, and the specific quality of my mother's voice when she redirected a conversation she didn't want to have. I did not plan it as a strategy. I planned it as sanity, as proof to myself that the things that happened had happened. Because our family had a talent for revision, and I had been living inside other people's revisions of events for long enough that I needed an external record to anchor myself to the truth of what I had experienced. What I also did not know that September evening was that my grandmother had been watching the same things I was watching for far longer, and had her own version of a record that would, in the fullness of time, change everything. My grandmother, on my father's side, was Ruth Elaine Calloway. She was 77. She lived alone in a house in Salem, Virginia, that smelled like cedar and strong coffee, and the specific dry scent of old books that have been read many times. She had been a schoolteacher for 34 years and had the teacher's particular combination of warmth and unflinching honesty. She would tell you something hard with such evident care that you could not receive it as cruelty. She called me every Thursday evening. Not my parents, not Marcus, me. She had been calling me every Thursday since I was 16, and she had observed, at a family gathering, the specific way I sat at the table and the specific way the table organized itself around me, or rather, didn't. You're the one who notices things, she said to me once, on one of those Thursday calls. That can be a lonely way to be in a family that doesn't want things noticed. I was 20. I said, it is lonely. She said, I know. I've been noticing things in this family for 40 years. A pause. I've been taking care of something. When the time comes, you'll understand. I said, what does that mean? She said, it means I see you, Brooke. I have always seen you. And what I see is worth protecting. She changed the subject after that. Back to her garden, back to the book she was reading. But I held the sentence. I've been taking care of something. I held it the way you hold a thing you don't fully understand but know is important. That was 11 years ago. I have thought about it many times since. Let me tell you about my career because it matters to what comes later. I passed my registered professional reporter exam at 24 with a speed certification of 225 words per minute. That puts me in the top 11% of working court reporters in the country. I became the senior reporter at my firm at 27. I specialize in complex civil litigation, cases involving financial disputes, corporate malfeasance, family estate contests. Cases where the exact words matter because the exact words are the difference between a judgment that changes a life and one that doesn't. I have sat in rooms where people lied under oath and been the person who made the permanent record of those lies. I have sat in rooms where the truth was said, finally, after years of being suppressed, and made the permanent record of that too. I understand better than most people what it means to have a record. I understand what it costs when you don't. My family did not understand my career. My father found it fine in the way he found most things about me fine, acceptable, not interesting. My mother thought it sounded careful, which in her vocabulary was not entirely a compliment. Marcus, when it came up, would say, so you just type fast. I would say, yes. I did not explain further. I had a transcript at home. 214 entries in 4 green notebooks that contained all the further explanation I would ever need. The dinner happened in October. My parents were celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary. A dinner at their house with 16 people, my father's business partner Ray and his wife, my mother's sister Deborah and her husband, 3 couples they had known since the 1990s, Marcus and his girlfriend Kelsey, and me. I had driven 3 hours from my apartment in Richmond, where I had moved at 26, and where I had spent 5 years building a life that had distance from Roanoke built into its geography by design. The dinner was going the way dinners at my parents' house went: wine, the performance of a happy family, the particular quality of ease that surfaces when a family has been practicing its public presentation for long enough that it has become automatic. My father was in form, my mother was in form. Marcus was charming in the effortless way Marcus was always charming when there was an audience. The thing that happened was small by the standards of what our family considered significant. That is always how it starts. Ray, my father's business partner, a loud, genial man who had known my father since 1987, asked what I did. I told him. He said, "Court reporting, like stenography?" I said, "Yes, and deposition work, civil litigation, some arbitration." He said, "Huh, you must hear some wild stuff in those depositions." I said, "Everything said in a proceeding becomes part of the official record. It's my job to make sure it's accurate." My father, from the head of the table, said, "Brooke's always been the careful one. Marcus is the entrepreneur." He turned to Ray. "Marcus has been thinking about expanding the pressure washing. I've been thinking of backing him." Ray said, "Oh yeah? How much?" My father said, "Probably $40,000 to start. Equipment, marketing." He said it easily, the way you say amounts that are comfortable to you. I did not show it on my face. I am a court reporter. I have been trained to be in the room without being in the room. Present, precise, invisible in my own presence. I picked up my water glass. I set it down. My mother said, to fill the small silence, "We're just so proud of both our kids." She said it to Ray's wife in the warm general way that means it's being said to the room rather than to anyone specifically. Ray's wife nodded. "That's wonderful, both doing so well." I said, "Dad, when you backed Marcus's pressure washing with the company truck 6 years ago, how much did the side mirror repair cost?" The table shifted. Small shift. The kind that only happens when something has been said that doesn't belong in the performance. My father said, "What?" I said, "The cracked side mirror on the F250. When Marcus used it for the pressure washing side project in 2018. There was also a floor mat missing. I was curious if those were ever accounted for." My father's jaw tightened. Ray looked between us with the careful expression of a man trying to determine whether this was a joke. My mother said, "Brooke." I looked at her. She said quietly, with the full weight of 31 years of the same instruction, "Don't make a scene." And that was the moment, that sentence, at that table, in front of those 16 people, with $40,000 being offered to Marcus, and not a single question asked about the $600 he took from my drawer when I was 19, or the truck, or the floor mat, or the 214 entries in 4 notebooks that said, "This is the record. This is what was said. This is what was taken. This is who was told to be quiet." I did not make a scene. I reached into my bag. I took out notebook number 3. I had brought it deliberately, not out of hope that I'd need it, but out of the professional habit of a woman who never goes into a significant room without documentation. I had tabbed the page, green sticky tab, left margin, entry dated September 14, 2018. I opened to it. I turned it so the lamplight caught the page. I read it out loud, in the clear, even voice I use in deposition rooms when I am reading back testimony. September 14, 2018. Sunday dinner, Callaway House, Roanoke. Dennis announces Marcus may use Company Truck 3, a 2017 Ford F250, for a personal pressure washing side business. Brooke objects that it is a company asset. Renee says, "Don't make a scene." Marcus smiles. Truck leaves Monday, returns 4 months later with 11,247 additional miles, 1 cracked side mirror, 1 missing floor mat, no accounting made, no objection raised. I closed the notebook. The table was quiet. Ray was looking at my father. My father was looking at the notebook. My mother had her hand flat on the tablecloth the way she put her hand flat on surfaces when she was managing something internal. Marcus was very still. Kelsey, to her credit, was looking at her plate with the expression of a woman who has just understood something about the family she has been dating into. My father said, "You've been keeping notes on this family?" I said, "I'm a court reporter, Dad. I keep records of what people say so that what was said cannot be disputed later. I've been doing that in my professional life since I was 23. It turns out the habit carries over." My mother said, "Brooke, this is not the place." I said, "You've been telling me that my whole life, Mom, that wherever I was not the place, that whatever I needed to say should be said differently, more quietly, less inconveniently." I paused. My voice was level. This is the place. It's always been the place. I just didn't have the record organized yet. Ray said to no one in particular, I'm going to get some more wine. He stood up, his wife stood up. Had not planned for the possibility that they would want to see rather than defend. My father is a man who ran a business for 27 years. He understands documentation. He understands that when a record exists and is organized and is specific, it is more reliable than memory. He turned pages. He stopped at entries I could identify by the dates visible from where I sat. He said nothing while he read. He closed the first notebook. He set it down with both hands. The careful way, he said, How many entries did you say? I said, 214. He said, Across how many years? I said, 6. He was quiet for a long time. My mother was crying, not dramatically. The quiet, persistent kind that means the tears are coming because the body has decided they need to and there is no stopping them. My father looked at me and said, I didn't know it was this much. I said, I know. He said, That's not. I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm saying I didn't know because I never looked. I said, No, you didn't. He said, I told you not to make a scene every time you tried to show me. I said, Yes. He said, That was wrong. Not, I'm sorry you felt that way. Not, we did the best we could. That was wrong. He said it with the specificity of a man identifying a structural failure, locating the exact point where the thing had cracked and naming it as the cause. I silenced you every time you were right. I did that because it was easier than addressing what you were right about. He paused. I'm sorry, Brooke. My mother said, I said it too. Every time, don't make a scene. She was looking at the notebooks on the table, not at me, at them. I told myself I was keeping the peace. But there's no peace in a house where one person has to keep quiet so everyone else can be comfortable. She looked up. You were never making scenes. You were telling the truth. And I trained you to believe those were the same thing. She reached across the table. Her hand covered mine. I'm so sorry, baby. I looked at my mother. I thought about 31 years of Don't Make a Scene, and the drawer, and the truck, and Thanksgiving, and the 214 entries, and the Thursday calls with Grandma Ruth, and the 4 green notebooks lined up on my parents' kitchen table at 11 p.m. on their 35th anniversary. I thought about the court reporter's fundamental belief that what was said deserves a record, that the record is not making a scene. The record is respect for the truth. I said, I forgive you, to both of them. Not because everything is fixed, but because I believe you mean what you just said, and because I have been carrying these notebooks for 6 years, and I would like to start putting some of that weight down. My father nodded. My mother held my hand. We sat there until the tea went cold. Here is where my grandmother comes in. Because she always comes in, and she came in exactly when she should have. 3 weeks after the dinner, I got a call from a woman named Helen Marsh, an estate attorney in Salem, Virginia. She said, I represent the estate of Ruth Elaine Calloway. Your grandmother passed a secondary document to me for safekeeping 3 years ago, with instructions to contact you when she felt the time was right. She updated her instructions 4 months ago, she said. And I'm reading her note directly. Brooke will have said something true by now, and someone will have finally listened. Give her the folder when that happens. She'll know what to do with it. I said, What's in the folder? Helen Marsh said, Your grandmother kept a record of her own, 40 years of it. She called it her account book. She paused. It's quite detailed. I drove to Salem on a Saturday morning. Helen Marsh's office was on East Main Street, 2nd floor above a flower shop. She handed me a manila folder, thick, legal-sized. Inside was a 40-year record in my grandmother's handwriting, a retired school teacher's handwriting, precise and small and perfectly legible, of every incident she had witnessed or been told about in the Calloway family. The favoritism, the dismissals, the money, the silencings, her own attempts to address it with my father over the years, and his responses, word for word as best she could reconstruct them. The $600 from the drawer, the truck, the Thanksgiving, things I had documented and things I had never told her and she had observed independently. 40 years of parallel record. At the back of the folder was a letter. Cream paper, her handwriting in blue ink. Brooke, I've been watching this family since before you were born, and I want to tell you something I should have said out loud more often. You were never wrong. Every time they told you not to make a scene, you were telling the truth, and they were asking you to be quiet about it because the truth was inconvenient. I kept this account book so you would know, someday, that someone had seen what you saw, and written it down before you were old enough to write. You are the one who notices things. You always were. This record is yours. Do with it what you think is right. I trust your judgment. I always have. All my love, Grandma Ruth. I read it twice in Helen Marsh's office. Then I sat very still for a while. The way you sit when something has been confirmed that you needed confirmed. And the confirmation is so complete that you don't know exactly how to hold it. Helen Marsh brought me water. I thanked her. I drove home with the folder on the passenger seat, my hand resting on it at the red lights on Route 419, feeling its weight. That night I called Louisa. She is my person, has been since college, a speech therapist in Roanoke with a talent for saying the exact necessary thing. She said, "What does it feel like?" I said, "Like I've been doing an audit for 6 years and someone just handed me the original ledger." She said, "Is it enough?" I thought about it. It's more than enough. It's proof that I wasn't imagining it, that my grandmother saw it too, that it was always real. She was quiet for a moment. "Brooke," I said. "Yeah," she said, "you were never imagining it." I said, "I know that now." She said, "I know you know." I just wanted to say it out loud. That is why she is my person. Let me tell you where everyone is now. I had a second conversation with my father. 3 weeks after the dinner. Just the two of us at a diner in Roanoke on a Tuesday morning. He had asked for it. He came with a legal pad. Not as a gesture, just because that is how my father processes things, in writing, organized. He had a list of 7 things he wanted to address directly and take accountability for. He went through all 7. I listened to all 7. Some of them I knew. Some of them surprised me, things he had observed and not acted on that he had been carrying as his own form of record. At the end he said, "I have been protecting the image of this family for 35 years. I told you don't make a scene because a scene would have disrupted the image, but the image was built on top of something wrong, and a building built on a bad foundation is not a building worth protecting." He looked at me. "You were right. Every time. The scene you were trying to make was the truth, and the truth deserved to be said." He slid the legal pad across the table. I wrote all 7 down. "So you have a record." I looked at that legal pad for a long time. My father, Dennis Calloway, HVAC company owner, 35-year image manager, sitting in a diner on a Tuesday with a list of 7 things he had done wrong, and a court reporter daughter who he had finally understood, 31 years in, was not making scenes. She was making records. I took the legal pad. I kept it. My mother has been calling every Tuesday and Thursday. She started the Thursday calls herself. She told me she was starting them because Grandma Ruth had called me every Thursday and she wanted to continue something Ruth had started. I cried when she said that. I let her hear it. She said, "I'm going to try to be the mother Ruth was to you. I know I'm starting late, but I'm starting." I said, "Thursday works." She said, "I know it does." Marcus and I have had one conversation. It was short and not easy, and both things were necessary. He called on a Sunday. The call had the quality of something prepared, words organized in advance the way words get when someone has been sitting with something and has decided to say it. He said, "I took things from you. Not just money. I took the room in the house, and I took the attention, and I took the truck, and I didn't think of any of it as taking because nobody ever told me it was wrong. That's not an excuse. I'm saying I understand now that what I thought was just how things were was actually built at your expense." A pause. "I don't expect you to forgive me right now. I just wanted to say it without wanting anything back." I said, "Thank you, Marcus." He said, "Can I ask, the 214 entries, were there good ones too?" I thought about it. "Yes," I said, "a few." He said, "Okay." He didn't ask me to tell him which ones. That restraint was new, and I noticed it the way I noticed everything, and I wrote it down. The notebooks, I still have them. All 4. I have not destroyed them, and I do not plan to. They are not a weapon. They are a record of what happened and how I survived it, and what it cost, and what eventually, slowly, imperfectly changed. I have added 3 entries since October. All 3 are about things my parents did right. I am keeping those too. Grandma Ruth's account book is in a fireproof box in my apartment in Richmond, beside my court reporting equipment, and 2 years' worth of case transcripts, and a framed photograph of Ruth and me on her porch in Salem, both of us drinking coffee, both of us squinting into the afternoon light. On the back of the photograph, in her handwriting, "The ones who notice things. We run in the family." I am in the middle of building something new with my parents and my brother. I am not in a hurry. I have learned, from 6 years of notebooks and 40 years of my grandmother's account book, and a career spent in rooms where truth gets made permanent, that the timeline of real things cannot be rushed. They take the time they take. The record exists. That is enough for now. Here's what I want to say before I go. Don't make a scene is one of the oldest instructions a family can give. It means your truth is inconvenient to the presentation we have decided to make. It means we have organized this household around a version of events that requires your silence to remain intact. It means the image matters more than what is real. Every time someone tells you don't make a scene, what they are actually saying is, what you are about to say is true, and true things are dangerous to us, and we need you to protect us from them. You are not obligated to protect them. You are not obligated to be quiet. You are not obligated to absorb what is wrong into the place in your body where silence lives, and hold it there until it becomes something harder to carry than the truth would have been. You have every right to say what is true, and if the room won't let you say it, you have every right to write it down. Date at the top of the page, exact words, what was said and what was dismissed and what was taken, the time it happened. You keep the record. You keep all of it. Not for revenge, for yourself. Because the truth does not require anyone's permission to exist. It just requires someone willing to write it down. I am a court reporter. My job is to make the record. My grandmother was a school teacher. Her job was to make things legible that had been obscure. We run in the family, she said, the ones who notice things. If you are the one who notices things in your family, the one who sees what is unequal, what is unfair, what is being dismissed every time you try to name it, I want you to hear this. You are not making scenes. You are telling the truth. Write it down. The record you keep is the record that will matter. Not to punish anyone, to protect yourself. To anchor yourself in what is real when the people around you are committed to a different version. To have something to show, someday, in a kitchen or a conference room or a diner on a Tuesday morning that says, "This happened. I know it happened. I wrote it down. Here is the date. Here are the words. Here is the truth." The truth doesn't expire. It doesn't care how long it's been sitting in a folder in an estate attorney's office in Salem, Virginia. It doesn't care how many times it was told not to make a scene. It waits. It is patient in the specific way that true things are patient, without urgency, without anxiety, without any doubt at all that it will eventually be read. My name is Brooke Calloway. I'm 31 years old. I'm a court reporter in Richmond, Virginia. I have 4 notebooks and my grandmother's account book and a legal pad my father wrote 7 things on at a diner on a Tuesday. They told me not to make a scene. I didn't. I made a record. 214 entries, 6 years. Every word. And the record, when the time came, was everything. Thank you for staying until the very end. If you have ever been told, don't make a scene when you were telling the truth, drop a comment. Tell me what you were saying when they told you to be quiet. I read every single one. Share this with the person in your life who has been keeping their own record in their head for years and needs to know it's worth writing down. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.